That's how most people know me, as a survivalist. He calls it my participation in that show. I spent 56 days in isolation on Vancouver Island until they came and told me that I was the last one that ever went there. And that was an environment that I had never been in before, so it gave me the opportunity to test out my survival skills and the things that I do here in the mountains, to apply that type of modality in a different environment and see how it would hold up. So I'm also really into preparedness. I've had the awareness since I was a young boy that our patterns of life are really out of balance. One day I was eating a bag of trail mix, and I had this epiphany. As I read the back, they listed the country of origin behind each ingredient, and there were 10 countries represented in this single bag of trail mix. So I thought to myself, in my mind's eye, I pictured the globe in 10 different locations. And all of the energy that went into producing each one of those ingredients had to be trucked and flown and farmed. It involved fuel, it involved caloric energy of the people. It involved my monetary energy to go buy it. It involved trucks many times taking it to warehouses and into the stores and forklifts. So if it were possible for us to quantify and tally up all of the energy that went into this bag of trail mix, I think we could agree that more energy went into it than the energy that was ultimately derived by the end user, because it's just ultimately a snack. Right? So if a hunter-gatherer lived that way, if our ancestors lived that way, we would not be here. If you spend more energy than you take in, you will die. And that's when I had the realization that we're all going to die, so thanks for coming. No, really. Our life pattern in modern times really is out of balance. And I think that a correction, a reset, will definitely occur at some point. Because if you look at the human timeline of history, we were hunter-gatherers all through this timeline for thousands of years, and now we have this little blip on the screen when we had the Industrial Revolution, and then we've got all the fuel-based stuff and supply chains and all of that. It's very fragile. The more moving parts that a thing has, the more likely it is that one of them will fail at some point, and it has this chain reaction. So from an early age, I began to ask myself, okay, how did mankind do it up until this point? What were the skills necessary that my forebears did that enabled them to live? And so I spent the majority of my adult life traveling around learning those skills from native elders and anybody who would hold still long enough to answer my questions and teach me. I've always sought out the older people. They had gray hair, I'd run them down and talk to them. Tell me what your life was like, what enabled you to live this long. And tell me about the Great Depression. And I learned a lot from that. So I've been around the preparedness movement a while, and also I was in law enforcement for 8 years, so I got to see that aspect of society, and there were some lessons learned there as well. And I've worked in training some military units in what I do with survival and edged weapons and tracking and counter-tracking and things like that. So I've got kind of a broad spectrum of knowledge all the way from the Stone Age stuff. I really can't go out there and rub sticks together and make things out of rocks and sticks, like a caveman, up to the more modern things and everything in between. And so today we've heard a lot about the threats. That's the thing with this whole event, threats and solutions, right? And it can really be overwhelming, especially somebody that's new to preparedness, when you look at all the potentiality that there is in our world for things to go bad. Just watch the news. I mean, really, every day. It doesn't have to be some apocalyptic event. Your Armageddon may be tomorrow. It may be on your trip home in your vehicle. You may have that car wreck, and then all of a sudden, like Skinny says, then you're the first responder. So it can happen. It happens every day. It seems every day there's shootings and people are wounded and this and that. We've got financial collapse. We've got North Korea, EMPs, CMEs. But what if I told you none of it really mattered? It doesn't matter what the threat is. And that's what I want to really talk about for a second, is kind of bringing everything back and let's simplify it, let's condense it down. Because if we get wrapped around the axle thinking about all these potential threats, we're wasting a lot of our mental energy. And survival is from the neck up. It's largely a psychological and a mental exercise. So if we're focusing all of those potential threats and the politics and the monetary stuff and the geopolitical stuff, then we're not focusing on anything that you can really do anything about. I can't do anything about it. When I look at Washington and I see things that I don't like, what can I do about it? Absolutely nothing. What can I do about the North Korean threat? Nothing. Can I prevent an EMP? Absolutely not. But it doesn't matter. And the reason it doesn't matter is, regardless of the precipitating event, if it's an EMP or we have Chinese paratroopers falling out of the sky or whatever, economic collapse, famine, pestilence, it boils down to the same things that you will be tasked with: water, shelter, fire, food, and security. That's it. That's your basic needs. Those 5 needs in a nutshell. And those needs will be constant regardless of what the event is. And those things are what we can focus on now and actually do something about. You can affect a change on that. I can provide water, shelter, fire, food, and security for myself, for my family, and for my community. So if we focus on the things that we actually can do, now we're making progress. We're stepping forward. And so what enabled me to survive out in the field when I'm overwhelmed with all these different things is I ask myself, what's going to kill me first? And the answer is, okay, you're going to freeze to death. So I'll check that box. Build a shelter, make a fire, now I'm not going to freeze to death. Then I reassess the situation. What's going to kill me now? You need water. So I go get a drink of water. And by staying focused on the most pressing task in front of you, one thing at a time, then you don't fall into the panic and the anxiety. It's just like the old saying, how do you eat a cow? One bite at a time. And we have a tendency to become overwhelmed. And so by focusing and doing that, that enables you to just take it step by step by step. It's just like life. Most of the things that we really worry about, they never really happen anyway. And most of them we can't change. But what we can do, what I do as a survival instructor, is I want to reconnect people with what it means to be a fully functioning human on the earth. If you look at a bear or a deer, any animal, 100 years ago, and you picture them, let's think about how they lived, how they looked, what they did. And we fast forward to today and look at that same bear or that same deer, there really is no change, except they have access to dumpsters now. So they haven't changed. But look at humans over 100 years, 50 years. Humans are the only thing in all of creation that will not stay in their lane. Okay? So we've had all these technological advancements. I have more technology in my pocket now than they had on the first space shuttle. It's at our fingertips. Are we evolving? Most people would say humans have really evolved. I mean, we were rubbing sticks together, and then we had gunpowder and metal, and then we had all the world wars, the industrial age, and now we can do mass transit vehicles, we can fly, we can go to the bottom of the ocean, we can go to the moon. But are we evolving as a species? Let's take it down to the individual. Look at the individual person. If I could bring up an image here of a human 100 years ago and have him stand next to me and bring one of you out of the audience and compare you to him, who's stronger? Who can sustain their own life? So we actually are in a de-evolutionary spiral. And here's the reason why. Human beings have forgotten how to sustain their own life in their native habitat. What if I told you I'm going to drop you off on a mountain somewhere in the middle of winter and I'll be back to get you in 30 days? What would be your initial feeling? Would it be, oh boy, time to go camping? Or would it be dread? Would it be fear? Most likely there'd be fear, there'd be anxiety there. And that's because we see ourselves as separate. We see ourselves as something separate from all the rest of it. You know, we have all these boxes now. Look at what we're in right now. This is just one big box. That's all it is. Look at our lives, filled with boxes. We live in a box, the little box next to the bed beeps, tells me to get up. Then I get into a box with water coming out of it, get scrubbed up. Get into a little box with wheels, drive to another box where I work in. Usually those are separated into more boxes called cubicles, and they're in front of the box while they're working. And then we trade hours and hours of our lives to get money. So ultimately your money is, you've traded life for that, and you only have so much life. That's your most precious resource. So you redeem that money for things that other people have done for you. They have made the kill on the animal. They have harvested the food. They split the wood, so to speak, in the form of the heat that comes into your homes and all this. And you take that money and you go back to the box with wheels, you go to the other box where all the boxes are in there, and you trade that money for boxes and put them in the box with wheels and go back to the command post box where you live, and then you eat from those boxes while you're watching the box. And when it's all over, they put you in a box. So the first step for your psychology is to think outside the box. That's what we have to do. We have to get out of the box. All native cultures did everything in a circle. Everything, the earth is a circle, everything moves in a circle. So to reconnect, we need to understand, how do I meet my most basic needs? Water, shelter, fire, food, protection, or security, however you like to term it. And security and protection, they've always been an issue. If you look at the human timeline, like Dr. Forstchen alluded to, there's always going to be war. There's always been war. Human nature has not changed. So a lot of people think, well, I'll go back to hunting and fishing. That's how I'm going to feed my family when things kick off. And look at what all that entails. You're going to take the $700 rifle with the $400 scope, get into the $40,000 pickup truck with the $10,000 ATV on the back of it, with the $300 tree stand, with a belly full of biscuit and gravy, and go out into the woods to hunt. And most of you that have hunted know, and all that involves fuel and modern things that you yourself can't control. You're dependent on a supply line to get all those things. And most of you that have hunted know that you more often than not will come back empty-handed, right? So back to that hunter-gatherer thing, I'm spending calories, I'm not getting calories back. And I will tell you for a fact, nobody in this room is going to go out there and hunt and fish and run a trot line and a country boy can survive. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. I have lived as a hunter-gatherer, literally out there just with stone implements and bone and whatever I could come up with. And I have sustained my existence that way. And we're not going to go back to doing that. And the reason for that, if you talk with people in this area that survived the Depression, they'll tell you there were no deer here in the 1930s. No deer in the mountains. And that was with the population as it existed at the time. So now if we're all of a sudden, all of us are out there gunning for these things, how long do you think until they'll be like the buffalo? Totally extinct, right? So to hunt and to fish has always been supplemental at best. So that's one illusion. So as we're talking about threats and solutions. So what I want to pose to you is that probably, I'm assuming most of you are preppers, you're into preparedness because you're here. One of the biggest threats that I see is from the neck up. It's our psychology, our thought process, and we really are kidding ourselves. And I work with a lot of preppers. I'm working with people. I teach survival full time. That's all I do. I also teach combatives, edge weapons, firearms, the whole deal. And in this country and outside the country. And where I see the big common holes in people's thought process is around security. Well, I have a gun. I'll just shoot them. Maybe, maybe not. How many of you have been in a firefight? Probably not a lot, right? Just a handful maybe. So you really don't know how you're going to perform in a full-on violent situation. And you probably have not had adequate training to enable you to do that. So to think that you're going to all of a sudden rise to the occasion when this thing happens. And like I say, it may be your Armageddon tonight. You may hear glass break. Someone's in your house, they're going to do violence against you. You have to do violence to stop them. You will not rise to the occasion. Nobody will. You will default to your absolute lowest level of training, whatever that may be, is about the best that you can hope for. And so what I see, especially in our country and in our culture, is we'll go out and buy a gun, and then we'll put some holes in some paper at an unrealistic distance. It's not moving, I'm not moving, totally unrealistic. And we think we're ready. We're ready for that day when it comes. And we had a good demonstration here on medical things, tourniquets, pressure dressings, such as that. And I'm of the opinion that if you carry a weapon and you don't carry a medical kit, it's just like driving around with no spare tire. If you're involved in violence, at the end of this violent exchange, be it with knives, sticks, guns, bullets flying both ways, what are the chances that somebody's going to be leaking at the end of that? And so, where's your medical kit? Where's your medical training? To me, it's incumbent on you, if you carry the weapon, to have the medical kit, have the medical training. It's absolutely part of it. And see, what we do, human beings tend to remain in our comfort zone, right? We like things nice and comfortable. We don't want to come outside of that comfort zone. And to learn these things, and to even admit psychologically that you need to go out and train, pulls you out of that comfort zone. And if your training is any good, it will pull you out of your comfort zone. And I'll use the analogy of swimming. How many people here know how to swim? Okay, so you'll understand what I'm about to say. Think back to when you learned how to swim. First time you went in the water. There was some fear there, right? We held on to the side of the pool, we clung to somebody's shoulder, and they're trying to teach us and we don't want to let go. Because we had the awareness, this is a foreign environment. And I do not have the skills to survive in this new environment. But then fast forward to when you learned how to swim. Now all of a sudden, no problem, I'm swimming, baby, I got this. I can survive here. And so then your friends push you off in the pool, or you trip and fall in the water. There's momentary shock, but what do? You go to swimming. Because that is not a foreign environment to you anymore. You've been there and you've had the skills to operate in that environment. And it's very much like that with preparedness. We tend to go out and buy the stuff, but we don't really test it or ourselves under realistic circumstances. So reality-based training, remember those three words, reality-based training, is what's lacking, okay? You've got the big surgical kit, you've got the firearms, you've got this bug-out bag. Have you used any of it in real-world conditions? Day before yesterday, I had on my back a 70-pound rucksack, and I ran with it for 2 hours. Because I know that I will not rise to the occasion. If I suddenly ask my body, hey, carry a bunch of stuff with a sense of purpose, I'm going to damage myself. But if I make that part of my life, and it's something that I do as a matter of course for exercise, then I know that I have that ability. And I can also make sure all of those little things that are going to happen, Murphy's Law stepping in, blisters and rubs, the rucksack fits, it's not too heavy, I have what I need in it. How many of you have gone out on a cold night when it's teens and build a shelter and sleep in it? I mean, that is absolutely essential that you do that. And if you can get a 0-degree night, all the better. Because once you have that skill set, then you have a frame of reference. Experiential frame of reference is absolutely essential for all of this, okay? If you have the bug-out bags, have you put it on your body? Have you walked with it? Have you walked with it over a distance? How far do you live from here? Do you have it with you? Is it in your vehicle now? Because it should be. Like me, I'm 2 hours from home. So my closest resupply point, should something happen here, is first my body, it's on my person. And then my second is the vehicle. So in the vehicle is the closest resupply point that I have access to. So I always keep things there. But also keep things on my person. And one thing I was noticing as I look at the audience, let's see, how do I say this? Some of you are not spring chickens anymore. So, and me included, I'm feeling it. I tell people it's not the year model, it's the mileage, you know. And mileage-wise, I'm about 80. So I want to throw a couple things at you, things that I carry on my person every day. And we're going to build, if we're ever going to be successful at survival or preparedness, we have to build these things into our normal patterns of life. What is it that we do every day? We have these little routines and rituals. Like the ladies, they get up, they take a shower, spend an inordinate amount of time on the hairdo, war paint ceremony, and all of this. That's what I call it. And so they get dressed and they go on. And the guys, we usually don't shower, do we? We just jump up, throw clothes on. We put on a belt, we put a wallet in our pocket, we grab a cell phone, keys, and put shoes on our feet. And so that needs to be our first line of defense. So what statistically is the #1 killer of human beings out on the land? What's the first thing usually that kills us? Sorry? Hypothermia. Okay, so the first thing I can do to ensure my survival is I can dress for success. Cotton kills. I do not wear cotton. I do not own cotton socks. I wear merino wool socks. Darn Tough is the name of the company. I don't own stock in them, but it's all I wear. There's a guy in Afghanistan who wore his 65 days straight. Yeah. See, wool is antimicrobial. Things won't grow in there. Take the sock off, it still smells pretty good. You know, wash the foot, put the sock back on. Maybe shake it off a little bit. Try that with cotton and see how it looks by day 3. So, you know, merino wool socks, fast polypropylene wicking, fast drying clothing like I'm wearing now. That way if I do get wet, I'm going to dry quickly. I'm not going to be predisposed to hypothermia. So that's the first thing. You guys remember in Atlanta, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, we had the little snow apocalypse, which people in other parts of the world laughed at it because it was like this much snow and everybody's locked down. But people actually spent, like Grouch was talking about, having things in your vehicle. There were people that spent 4 days in their car. Do you think when they left home that morning, they thought, oh, I think I'll camp in the car for 4 days on the side of the interstate? So that was their emergency that they should have been preparing for. It wasn't any EMP, it wasn't any of that, you know, stuff that we see with Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, but that was their emergency. And we always have the assumption when we leave the house we're coming back, but we may not. So I always ask myself as I'm stepping out the door in the morning, are you ready to sleep outside this time of year? And the answer is yes. In the summertime, I'm golden. There's edible plants everywhere. I can eat while I walk. It's not going to get too cold overnight. Luckily, we're blessed with lots and lots of sources of water here. So water resupply is not going to be an issue for me. I'm going to hydrate. So I feel good about it. And those are your big 2. Okay, there's a difference. And I want to make that distinction between short-term survival and long-term survival. Short-term survival is all about maintaining your core temp and staying hydrated. If you can do that, you've got life by the horns. A lot of people think about food. They ask me, oh, what's the grossest thing you ever ate, or what are we going to eat? You've got lots of time. I mean, look around. Most Americans are not in danger of starving to death anytime soon. We have onboard reserves, don't we? So we can fast. That's not going to kill you. Unless you're diabetic or have some type of medical predisposition that's dependent upon intake of calories. So we can put that one off for the short term. So in short-term survival, usually they say 3 days. Within 3 days, it's satisfied itself. The survival situation is over. You found help. You've been rescued or whatever. And so that's the first thing we have to do is survive that initial phase. And to do that, I don't want to freeze to death on my first night, because if I'm frozen to the ground, it's not going to matter what I wanted to eat because I'm dead now. And then after 2nd or 3rd day, depending on conditions, my physical makeup at the time, level of hydration, level of exertion, if I'm not taking water in, that could impact me. Injury can impact me very fast. I can bleed out really quick. So those are the things I need to be ready to handle at all times on my person. I'm not talking about your bug out bag. I'm not talking about the Connex you've got parked behind the house full of beans. I'm talking about what do you have on you right now. If I grabbed you right now and said, we're going to the woods right now, go. No time to go to the car or anything. What do you got? And so the term EDC, everyday carry, and I want to talk about it. So I carry a survival kit at all times. This is my survival kit. So when you see this, what do you see? Billfold, and that's what it is. It's a billfold. You notice it's not anything really remarkable. But what if I told you in here that I had fire starting kits, the ability to sew, the ability to signal, 2 canteens, the ability to treat water? You think all that would fit? Well, it does, and I'll break it down and show it to you one at a time. Just your standard wallet. So one of the first needs that we're going to have, especially this time of year, will be hydration. And we're situated near a lake. So here I have, that's basically 2 canteens right there, that will enable me to go to a source of water and carry that water with me as I'm on my journey to another source of water. But the first thing we're going to do about water is we're always going to fill this canteen first. There have been people that have died that still have water in a jerry can or a canteen. Fill this canteen first while you're at the water source. And a good indication of your hydration level is your urine. Your urine should be clear. The darker it is, the more trouble you're in. You want to drink copious amounts of water and keep a good clear flow of urine. If it's dark, you need to drink more. It's just that simple. So while I'm at the source, I'm going to hydrate me first. And I'm going to ration sweat instead of water. I'm going to monitor my physical activity. I'm going to thermoregulate. If I'm wearing multiple layers of clothing, even in the winter, if I'm sweating, I'm not being a good steward of my moisture that's in my body. So what I have to do is take off my hat, take off my layers, and now I'm feeling pretty comfortable again. Now when I stop and my physical activity decreases, what's going to happen? Start to get cold again, then the layers come back on. So it's a balance between thermoregulation, core temp, hydration. This is the non-sexy stuff of survival, but it's constantly on my mind. I'm constantly assessing myself in a clinically detached way for those things, core temp and hydration and mindset, making sure I'm not getting squirrely, which is a little bit late for that. Other ways these can be utilized in a desert or even here is you can place them over the end of a plant that you know is non-poisonous, non-resinous, not going to hurt you in any way. Seal this end off, place it in the sunlight, and as the liquid starts to evaporate from that plant, it's encapsulated in this plastic. So condensation forms, drips to the bottom, and you end up with a good mouthful of water after about 3 or 4 hours. So that's another tactic that can be used. These are purpose-built for survival kits. They're called Whirl Pack, WHIRL-PAK. And I don't think they sell them in small quantities. You have to get like a lot. So if you're in a prepper group, maybe you just make a bulk purchase, but it's definitely worth it. They have a gusset in the bottom, so when it's filled with liquid, it can stand up. And you just drop your tablets in, which I have here also in a waterproof container. So that's the hydration. Another thing I carry in my wallet, and I used this in the parking lot of a restaurant the other day. I started a fire in about 20 seconds. Is a Fresnel lens. This one is made out of plastic. It's not going to break. It's basically a magnifying glass. Capture the rays of the sun, focus it down to a tiny little dot on some dry grass or whatever tinder you have, and poof, you have a fire. More often than not, though, when I use this, I'm in a restaurant and someone left their reading glasses at home, and I'll pull my survival kit out, and then they can read the menu. Oh, yes, I'll have the bill. And so I've used it that way more than I have fires. But it's good to have. It's good for seeing things in the body, small things, seeing ticks, removing splinters, and that sort of thing. Signal mirror is also really handy to have. I have used this a few times. It's actually saved my bacon. Really, really small. It's also good for tick checks for those hard to reach areas. If you're by yourself, you need to be doing regular tick checks. Or maybe you have a foreign body in one eye, use your good eye to see what's going on to render self-aid, because I'm by myself a lot, so I tend to think in those terms. This can be seen for quite some distance, and it has the sight hole in it. Signaling is often overlooked, and it's something that is really important. Inside this piece of duct tape I have needle and thread, which I just used the other day to sew up a pair of pants and also a tear in my rucksack. Inside the duct tape I have fish hooks. You just fold it into a tab like this so that it doesn't stick together, gives you a place to open it, and I don't have a lot of loose hooks floating around. Because what area of the world do we live in? We've got a lake right here. We've got ponds, we've got creeks and streams. So that's an easy way to procure food with low calorie burn. Fire is also an important need. Everybody knows what a ferro rod is, I assume. If you're a prepper, you've seen these. I've actually been in situations where I've been fully submerged, come out of the water, take a knee on the side of the body of water, and make a fire instantly using a ferro rod. They work even when they're wet. In conjunction with that, I take a common drinking straw and I pack cotton balls and Vaseline that have been mixed together into the straw and seal both ends with a pair of pliers and a cigarette lighter. Now I've got a waterproof capsule that will even float, and I've even lit them up and put them on the water. It'll burn floating on the water. So you have a day like today where it just rained heavily earlier, everything's wet, this will give you an edge, okay? And we're going to demonstrate that here in just a few minutes. Two more needles with some really heavy duty thread. I like to sew a lot, it's a hobby. And I'm really hard on things so they tend to break. This is the British Commando wire saw. This is not the little cheap Chinese saws. Some of you probably have these in your kits. And if you do, what I want you to look for are the barrel swivels. That's these shiny things on each end, about the size of a large fishing weight. I have removed the rings on mine and I've replaced it with paracord. The reason for that is I just traveled around the world, went to Africa, And on the way there and back in other places, a few different countries, this was in my wallet, and this went with me the whole way. It's 8 strands of stainless wire. This will saw the horns off of an animal. It'll cut through bone, it'll cut through plastics like PVC pipe, it'll cut through wood, and it'll even cut through some types of metal. So it'll help you build a shelter, which is one of your most basic requirements. It's very light, and you're not going to injure yourself with it when you're tired. If you're swinging a machete around, chances of injury are pretty good. So if you're going to get one that has barrel swivels, because if it doesn't, they're going to kink. And this one will never kink because of the barrel swivels. See, when I grab it on both ends and pull it straight, I cannot make this thing kink up. No matter how it wads up, it will not kink. What happens with the cheap ones, the first time you do that, it forms a crimp, and then it will break on that crimp shortly. So you'll only be using it for about 10, 15 minutes, and it's going to snap.
You had that on your person when you went through the airport?
I did.
And they didn't stop?
No. And it's really, I mean, what's dangerous about it? There's a lot of survival equipment that you can't have, but that's an awful good one. In addition to that small pocket survival kit with the fish hooks and the weights, I use a 65-pound test spider wire. You can purchase this at any store. This stuff, I have sewn up backpacks with it. I've sewn clothing with it. I've fished with it. I've used it for tripwires, for perimeter alarms. I've used it for snares to catch animals, and I've also fished with it. So if there's one cordage that I would carry, it would be that. It takes up very little room, and it's very, very strong. Notice it's also earth tone. It's a mossy green. So when you lay it out in a snare or tripwire, it's not really visible. And then the end of the hacksaw blade, where the hole is, I just took a couple inches and cut that off. Makes a really good striker for the ferro rod. And then I also have here a ceramic knife, very small, but that's really all that you need. You can break down a complete buffalo with just that much blade. Making notches for your traps and triggers, that's all the edge that is required. So I carry that as a backup if I were to lose my primary knife. So all of that in the wallet: water, shelter, fire, and food procurement handled with what I carry in my wallet every day of my life. So I always have this kit. I have a duplicate of that kit that I carry inside my belt, which I won't bother going through. It contains the exact same things. It's just spread out through the length of a belt. It has a hidden zipper compartment in it. So should I lose the wallet, I have a backup kit that way. In addition to that kit in my pocket, I'm sure you've all seen the Sawyer mini filter. These are really, really popular now. I was a fan of these before they were cool. When they first came out, I introduced a couple of people in the Special Forces community to them, and one guy from the SAS over in the UK, and now they all carry them. They fell in love with them. I've carried this thing in about 4 different countries, and it's always on my person. What I love about it is there's no moving parts. It's only 20 bucks. Totally affordable. And part of my talk, Scanning Mick actually saved me some time on it. The duct tape that I wrap around this thing here, I've got several feet of this duct tape. And you've all seen the medical applications for that. In addition to lighting it on fire and using it as a fire starter, a torch, what have you. The thread on these will match up to a 20-ounce bottle. And you can't walk anywhere in the world without seeing discarded water bottles everywhere. They're literally everywhere. So you can go up to a mud hole, dip a bottle that you found on the side of the street in there, screw this on the top and have a drink, or you can just drink straight from the water itself, or you can use it as an inline filter to your hydration bladder, or you can put it on a bag and fill up your canteen, or you can make a gravity feed out of a larger bag. So lots of possibilities with this, and only for $20. So that's something that you should have on your person at all times. All this is my calendar and a notepad. I won't bore you with the contents of that. Yes, ma'am. 5-Star Gear. There's a website, 5stargear.com. I carry a 2-sided diamond stone. Those are about $20 if you look on one of the websites like Amazon, eBay, something like that. Because I like to keep any edged implement that I have razor sharp, and so it doesn't take up a lot of room. We talked about the ability to signal. Also, twice while I was in Africa, A signal whistle came in very, very handy, as did my little pocket flashlight that I carry. This can be used to get somebody's attention in a low light situation. It can be seen over quite a distance. I won't bust your eardrums with this whistle, but it doesn't take a lot of air to actuate a whistle. It's very shrill. Even if there's lots and lots of gunfire, I've been around like 15 rifles firing simultaneously. Somebody blows a whistle, you will hear that because it's on a different decibel range. We had just killed an animal. I was with the Bushmen in the central Kalahari region of Botswana, and it was starting to get dark. And so me and the Bushman tracker that I was with and another Afrikaner had this animal here, and it's getting dark, and you got jackals and hyenas moving in, and they're getting to where they're like 50 yards out from us. We're starting to get pretty nervous. And where we are at this point was quite away from where we started our hunt, so the vehicle was kind of searching around trying to find us. And they're getting closer and closer, and you hear them yipping, yapping, and growling and stuff, so I pull my wallet out, and I'm like, I'm going to make a fire. We're going to have to get something to keep them from coming in here and eating us, you know. And about that time, the Bushman heard the vehicle, and he was pointing in the direction of the vehicle, which I couldn't hear, part of my hearing's gone. And I asked him which way, and he pointed. And so I stood up on my tiptoes, and I did this, and I started hitting this whistle. They both saw my light and heard my whistle and came directly to us, just in time, before we had any encounters with dangerous wildlife. Second time, 2 weeks later, we're in the Okavango Delta, and one vehicle was trying to locate another vehicle. We had modern communications. We had radios on both vehicles. He couldn't tell where we were. So I got on the radio and told him, switch off your engine and listen for a whistle. He did, got back on the radio, I heard you coming right to you, at our direction. So this little low-tech, inexpensive piece of equipment actually served me better than the high-speed digital communications that we had on board. So be sure to have those with you. Just the other day in the news, there was a man that had been out hiking, had gone missing, and they were flying search and rescue to try to locate him. He was recovered, and the way he was recovered, he had one of those small keychain lights that had the little red lens on it. And he heard the helicopters, and he got up to a high place, and he was hitting this little light, and they actually saw him and recovered. So something that small can actually save your life. And yes, it can happen to you. And you don't even have to be a hiker for it to happen to you. We had a lady over in Union County that went off the mountain. Her car rolled several times. She was down there for a while, I think a couple of days. And ultimately somebody noticed some disturbance and saw her down there. So she was both injured, predisposed to hypothermia, and had no way to get anybody's attention or help. That's also a no cell phone signal area on that mountain. And so that lower tech stuff will be there for you. I usually carry a length of parachute cord that you're all familiar with, because cordage is, actually have two. Survey tape, several feet of that, and I'll tear small pieces of that if I need to mark a trail or need to do things like if I leave one location, if I want to show a sign that I've been there, something easy to see in low light or in the dark, to aid rescuers in finding me if I have moved. But wait, there's more. If you call now while our operators are standing by, you're receiving free tourniquet. We've all seen the need for a tourniquet, right? So I have a tourniquet in this pocket. I keep it up front so that it is accessible with both hands because I don't know which one might be injured. And I'll show it to you because it's a different tourniquet than what you've seen from the other versions tonight. This one, notice I'm only using one hand to apply it. How long did that take? Skinny Manny told us you've got about a minute and 30 seconds or so if you have a femoral cut until you're unconscious and can no longer render self-aid. So when you need a tourniquet, you really need a tourniquet. Instead of, oh, go get a curtain, go get a wrench. I find that it's best to have one on you. And I keep it staged out really large like that in case it needs to go over a boot and up a leg. The name of this tourniquet is called RevMedX, R-E-V-M-E-D-X. Also, the cat tourniquets that he has are excellent as well. I prefer this one for carrying in the view of self-aid, if I'm helping myself. The reason for that is you saw how fast that tourniquet applies. So if I'm in the middle of a fight with someone, I can get the tourniquet on, click, click. If I have to move to cover, return fire, do any of that type of stuff, drag a buddy, open the door with my other hand, I'm not tied up here. I don't have a windlass getting involved with my clothing. And then I can tighten it back up. So that's why I choose this tourniquet. Also, back in the signaling department, this is one of the old signal panels used by the military, the marker panel that they'll lay on the ground so that they can see where to do airdrops and things like that. I usually dress in, earth tone colors. So if I'm on a mountain and I'm injured somewhere, they're not going to see me. I'm always in green. So it's a good thing to have something that is not in a green color. So I recommend if you have like an IFAC or something like that, that you put one of these in there with it, because if you're all in camo, it's going to be hard for people to see. And the rest of the medical kit that I carry is fairly thin. But what I have here is another tourniquet, a pressure dressing, a chest seal, a nasopharyngeal airway, a needle for chest decompression, hemostatic agent, and some gloves, all in this. So I can handle a whole bunch of trauma just with what's in my pocket right there. Water, shelter, fire, food protection. Also, I usually carry a blade that can be accessed with one hand. There again, always assume you'll be incapacitated. And that's pretty much it as far as survival kit. At least that's all I'm going to show you anyway. So, really lightweight. As you saw when I pulled my wallet out, you probably wouldn't think, wow, all that can go in there, and it can. And so instead of having this huge rucksack on us, start at this level. I mean, if you don't have these things on you, you absolutely can. Ladies can put it in your purse. Men put it in your billfold. One thing I do is really thin items I will put under the insoles of my boots. And I'll hide survival items there. And sometimes cash if I'm in a foreign country. If they want my wallet, fine, take it. And I've got money under my shoes as well. Because nobody there wears a size 14, they probably wouldn't want it. Got little feet. So, that level of preparedness right there, let's say you're in a car wreck, God forbid, but let's say you are, or you look over and you're injured, or someone in that car is injured, and you really need a tourniquet, it's good to have one on you and have it accessible. I actually have two there. And of course you need the ability to improvise a tourniquet out of something else, because if you're in a situation like the Boston bombing, there were a lot of tourniquets needed that day, so it's good to know how to properly improvise. But it's much better to have them with you. I need a volunteer. Thank you, ma'am, young lady right there on the second row. Come on up the stairs and through the door here. Backing up just a minute to what we talked about with the cotton balls and Vaseline mixed into a common drinking straw. Okay, we're gonna see if we can line this thing up using the ferro rod and some form of a striker. I'm gonna get this thing warmed up for you. Okay, you ever used one of these before? You haven't? First time for everything. All right. I'm getting it warmed up. So what we want to do, a lot of people have seen these things used and they're like this. People are throwing their sparks at something. Let's assume right here's my tinder. One of the best ways to use it is to place the striker hand firmly there and then pull. And a lot of people use their knives. So it's a bad idea to take a sharp knife and do this with it, because I saw a guy one time take the top of his thumb off. So if you're using the back of your knife, let that be stationary and then simply pull down on the ferro rod so the knife blade facing away from you, using the back right angle of the knife to do that. Do you think you can do that? What we're aiming for are those little white fibers right there. And actually, this one may fit your hands better. This part here is the part that we want to scrape on this rod. Okay? No pressure, everybody's watching. You got to bear down kind of hard. You get in there. Let's try this. So we'll put this hand kind of close like this, and then we're going to put this hand here. This hand's not going to move, but the one holding the rod is going to pull back. And I'm going to pull up really hard and straight like that. Put it really close right there, and then pull back really hard. This is where training comes in. Because if we have these kits and we don't use them and we're not learning how to use them, we can have bad results in the field. That's why I didn't want to leave today without teaching you this. We will get it. Rule number one is never give up. So what we got to do is we got to push down really hard like this, and I'm going to push down and slide at the same time. That is really a hard scrape. Want to try that one, see if you like it better? looks easy on TV, don't it? Another thing we could try is we could rub it back and forth really, really hard like that. And see if you can get a spark. All right, this is plan C. Okay, turn that way right here. Close your eyes. And then say, abracadabra. Magic, work every time. All right, so we're going to watch the burn time on this thing. We'll see how long it goes. Now, if we were to just use dry cotton, it would have already burned up by now, right? So by rubbing the petroleum jelly on it, we've encapsulated all those fibers and we've slowed down the oxygen flow and the rate of burn. And that's why it's burning kind of like a candle. Notice that I had the fibers spread out, kind of like a fan, so each of the fibers look like hair. That's an important part. If you take a big clump of cotton balls and Vaseline and lay it down, you will sit there and strike forever, and you're not going to get a flame because there's nothing fine enough sticking out for that spark to attach to and combust. Okay, so when you're using the cotton ball and Vaseline, expose the fibers and then light it. So you see, you get quite a bit of burn time on that. Nobody in here is the fire marshal, right? You don't know the fire marshal? Awesome. So usually when we need a fire, we really, really need a fire. I'm the kind of guy, my whole preparedness and survival mindset is worst first. I want you to prepare for the absolute worst case scenario. So if you train to that standard, if you always think in that standard of what's the absolute worst case scenario, how can I prepare for that? If that's what you're used to and that's where your standards are, and then when they tell you, North Korea invaded, that's all, I got this. Because I was training for something much harder than that. It's kind of like that in your thought process for your kid. Usually when we need a fire, we really need a fire. It's rained for 4 days. It snowed for the last 2 days, and now the snow is blowing in sideways, and I'm caught up on the ridge line of the mountains and near gale force winds so that I can hardly stand up. And I have to walk through the night in my wet frozen clothing to get out of the wind so that I can hopefully survive this night. And what I just described to you is something I lived through. Something like this, that little bit of extra eggs might be what takes you through it instead of trying to find the natural tenders that are all pretty much going to be wet. So it's just those small little details like that. So that's my survival mindset, preparedness, EDC that I want you guys to, hopefully you will all go and incorporate it into your lives. Because if you ever come to my class or something and I recognize you, I'm going to call you on it. I'm going to put you in a situation so you have that stuff. Because I've been known to do that, to keep it real. And speaking of which, let me get a volunteer. I need a prepper out of the group. There's a man right there. Come on up if you would, sir. Sir, are you any good with guns? Do you shoot?
Yes.
Do you carry a gun for self-defense?
Not me at the moment, but yes.
Okay, is it a semi-automatic?
Yes.
Awesome. Come on up through one of these stairwells here. And we're just, there you go, Rambo, get on up here. Okay, so let me pull out my handy-dandy phone. And see, this thing still has a flame on it, so it's burned for, several minutes, and if we had a substandard tender, that would have helped to get going. All right.
3 minutes and 15 seconds right now.
What was the time?
3 minutes, 15 seconds.
3 minutes and 15 seconds, and it's just about out there. And depending on how large you make them, I've had them go for 6, 7 minutes. And I usually carry more than just one, so you can combine them if you need to as well. All right. Put the tourniquet on your left arm, go. Not mine. You didn't come prepared. That's my stuff. No, go ahead. Get a tourniquet on your left arm. He'll probably never come to any event that I'm at again. He's like, there you go. You got it? I still got a distal pulse, so you don't have it. Notice also what his hands are doing here. His hands are tied up, aren't they? Still got a distal pulse. So can he return fire? Can he open and close doors? Can he drag his children or get their head down? That sort of thing. And so we said worst case scenario unconsciousness like a minute and 30, and so we're like at a minute and 10 now. So I think, you know, that's informative, right? When we're put on the spot. Do this task, you know, when you're not expecting it. How many of you have heard the term, and thank you for your participation, I appreciate that. Give him a hand. So, you know, you end up, you're in a fight, you're in a car wreck, you're in whatever. You go through a process called the OODA loop. How many have heard the term OODA loop? O-O-D-A. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. He wasn't planning on carrying out that task. So I announced that task to him, and that there was disorientation. His mind had to observe the situation and orient to what's around him, and now I have to make a mental decision. My brain has to tell my muscles, hey dude, do X in response to that. And by the time you do that, you're already behind the 8 ball, so to speak. Okay? It's one of the first things we got to remember about combatives is action always beats reaction. Okay? So now, how do you feel about volunteering again? I'm going to keep you clothed this time.
Sure.
Okay? He was so good at that. We'll throw another task at him. Okay. Is that clear and safe? It look good to you? What about that? He's thorough, isn't he?
Give me a gun, I gotta check it.
That's right. Don't reload that.
Hands still shaking from the last day.
Hey, that's a good point. His hands are shaking. And we did the easy version. What I do in a lot of my classes, I have people do jumping jacks and push-ups, and I spin them until they get so dizzy they can hardly stand up, and their hands are turning into flippers. Because that simulates what you're going to feel like when people are trying to kill you. Okay?
Right.
Fine motor skills are the first thing to go down the toilet. Fine motor skills are out the window. And so when we train, we want to do things that are gross motor, easy to operate with the edge of the hand, you know, not too complicated. No, we won't leave them all. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to take a firing position using this wall here, just standing here. And I want you to hold this in firing position, okay? And I want you to get a sight vision. And I want you to shoot the weapon. And fix the malfunction. Okay. All right, that was 20 seconds.
A long time.
Okay, this is that same malfunction. Fixed and fired. How long did that take? This is any malfunction. And so, that's what I'm talking about. So I can rack that all day and not fix it, but as soon as I pull down on the magazine, weapon goes in the battery, reseat it, and fire. Fine motor skills, training. Thank you again, sir. I appreciate you. You know, if you have a malfunction with your weapon and you just put a tourniquet on, first you had to have the tourniquet, then you had to have the knowledge to put the tourniquet on. Now you're in the worst possible case scenario. You're firing one-handed. Now you have a malfunction. You don't have the support hand to clear it. We did that with 2 hands. How would we do it with 1? See how these problems keep compounding. And it all goes back to those 3 words I gave you earlier, right? Reality-based training. Okay? It's not enough to just get the gun. You have to be trained in these things, all right? So I throw these things out there for you and grab people at random out of the audience and pull them out of their comfort zone, because I think it's beneficial to see the difference between preparedness and training versus marginal training. And we don't know what we don't know, right? We didn't know how to swim until somebody went into the water with us and took us through the process. And now if I push you in the pool, you can swim, because you made that unknown unknown. And that's what you have to do with all this preparedness stuff. It's got to be reality-based. It has to be as close to the real thing as possible. And so I guess what I'd like to do now is, where are we at on time here? Let's see. Been talking for a while. I'll just open it up to Q&A. And anything you guys want to talk about, anything at all, any questions you have for me, tax advice, marital advice, interior design, survival, preparedness, self-defense, the whole gamut. I'm here to answer your questions.
You mentioned,
Stood next to the light.
survivors from the neck up.
Yes, sir.
How important do you believe physical fitness is for preference?
Physical fitness, as I alluded to, that's an excellent question. As I alluded to earlier, what I do for exercise is I put on a rucksack weighing anywhere between 50 to 70 pounds, depending on the terrain and how I'm feeling that day. And I will go out and I will run with that. I don't measure my distance, I measure my time. I go for 2 hours. I figure if I can put on a rucksack and move with a sense of purpose for 2 hours, then I can pretty much get off the X and get somewhere. And so physical fitness is hugely important. Like I said earlier, you will not rise to the occasion. If you suddenly ask your body, hey, throw on this rucksack and walk home, if it's not something that you're accustomed to, you're going to injure yourself, or you're just going to not be able to do it. And back to the pocket kit, another reason for that, a friend of mine had his rucksack. He sat it down, went to answer nature's call. While he was gone, a bear comes by, found his pack really interesting, grabbed it, and took off with it. And he witnessed this with his knees around his ankles and could do nothing about it. So now there he is in the deepest, darkest North Carolina with no rucksack, okay? But what he did have on it was some kit like this, so he was able to still spend the night out there and be somewhat safe and comfortable. So that's another reason for redundancy. The survival from the neck up, for sure. Your mind's got to be right. Your mind is either going to be your greatest asset or it's going to be your biggest liability, depending on you. But the physical fitness is definitely important. You do need some measure of strength and flexibility. And just do what you can. We don't all have to be, you know, Olympic athletes. I'm certainly not at that level, but I can do physical tasks. I can cut down trees and pick them up and build stuff out of them and carry rucksacks. So I'm handy to have around that way.
Would you please demonstrate for us how to, if you have, say your dominant hand is out of service and you have a semi-automatic and you've already exhausted ammo. Show us how to one hand that automatic or semi-automatic.
To load?
Yes, sir.
To load the weapon with one hand. Okay, first let me unload the weapon with one hand. All you do is place the magazine in, seat the magazine against your body, and then you rack it. Thusly, now we have a malfunction. I rack it again to clear that. Bang. Now the reason that works is I put tack tape on top here. The skateboard tape or the tread tape that you've seen on stairs, I put a strip of that on top of my slide so that I can, against my body, actuate the weapon. You see the fresh round come out? When I do it again, see here we got a malfunction, clear that. But that's how it works. You can go against your clothing. If you don't do that, let's say that we did not have, for whatever reason, let's say we didn't have any tape on it at all. I could use a belt, or I could also, from a kneeling position, use the heel of my foot, like that. That's another incapacitation technique you could use for a pistol, if you only had one hand. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a website that someone could go to see about getting your training class?
I do have an email. I have a website that I really don't interact with because I don't really know how to use my phone. My flip phone died. And they gave me this thing, and I don't know how to do all that it does. I really hadn't unlocked the mysteries of my flip phone. When it died, I could only do 5% of what it was capable of. So I've got a website, Allen K Survival. I've got an email address. It's allen@allenKsurvival.com. It's ALANKAY. If you do Facebook, I've got a public Facebook page it's Allen K alone. Or just let's do like old times and call me on your road. 706-994-3405. 706-994-3405. Or at the end, I've got a few cards I can hand you. And I don't have a physical school. Just to clarify, what I do is I come to your area, and that way I can kind of show you what you have there and do an assessment of your place. And it's just better that way. If you have a group, one person comes to you instead of 20 people having to travel. Yes, sir.
Alan, you talked about wool socks. What's your views on bamboo?
I have friends that have used them. I've never used them. I did try alpaca one time, and I found that they wore out really quickly, so they weren't as durable. But I really can't speak to the bamboo. I've not tried it. Seems like for longevity, the wool is much tougher.
A list of all the things you just took out of your pockets that you carry with you.
I don't have one written down. You're welcome to, at the end, come up and look. And I guess I should probably do a video on that. But again, I'm technologically challenged. Once I've shot the video, I don't know how to take it and make it live on this other place. So I have to have it. I'm on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look up Allen K Survival, you'll see stuff on there. I didn't put it there. Somebody filmed me during a class and they put it up there. I'm not that tech savvy, really. I still rub sticks together for fire. So.
Any more questions?
This is a crazy question, but I have been watching some of the men today, but I want to know where you get your pants and you get your pants.
A fashion question.
He designed his.
Yeah, I did. I designed these. Yeah. They're made by True Spec. TRUSPEC. I like them because they dry quickly. That's my main criteria. They're really durable. And you can self-regulate the temperature. It's got vents on the sides which have screen in them, so we don't have ticks and leeches crawling in there and touching us in our tender places. And I like the pockets being up front. It's got plenty of capacity because, as you see, I carry a lot of stuff. So if I'm seated in a vehicle or whatever, I can access these things. And I just like having this stuff on me, you know. It's like the SAM splint that Skinny Medic was demonstrating. First time I ever used a SAM splint was on a 3-year-old at a Chuck E. Cheese with a tib-fib fracture. It was my son. And he got hurt going down the slide. And I suspected possibly a break, but wasn't sure, so I wanted to go ahead and mobilize his leg. And who had a SAM splint? I did. So have this stuff with you as much as possible. I always keep SAM splints in my car.
I'll have those pants in stock next week.
Okay.
And my pants are actually my company uniforms. My company actually buys these for me. And my pockets are just as full as he is.
Yeah, one of these, they're not quite. You know.
Not quite. Size doesn't matter. Family show, family show.
Yeah, I've worn these for 30 days. I have washed them every few days, but I've done everything from cutting wood, using chainsaws. I teach a lot, and I'm on my knees a lot, especially teaching friction fire. And this is them after 30 days of constant use and lots of washing, and they've held up really good. So.
When we're having this stuff that you're talking about, it's good to have, especially like a man or even a woman, to have something on there that's got the comments for different place to put them.
Right.
Dries fast.
Back to that first thing we were talking about, dress for success. So I dress around all this stuff that I know I'm going to carry. I need pants capable of that. And the other criteria they have to meet for me is they've got to be able to drive really quick so that I don't get hypothermic. And mobility. You ever try walking in wet blue jeans? You know, you get these chafing issues. It's quite a thing.
What caliber?
Sorry?
What caliber?
9mm. And the reason for that selection is 9mm is NATO standard. If you pile it up, there's going to be more of it in the world globally than there is any other caliber. And most of it, I've got some friends that do a lot of work as medics and things, and it's mostly shot placement. There's really, nobody can convince me, and they've even got data on it. You can't really convince me that there's a huge gain from calibers The one graft I saw had a bump over the 357. It had a little bump there, but, you know, unless I'm in Alaska and I'm worried about a bear attack, when can I carry a 454 Casull? But for self-defense, it's 9mm for me. Faster shot recovery.
When you teach these classes, how do we contact you?
I'll give you a card. You got my number on it. Where are you from, ma'am?
I am from Ecuador. I live here for
You're from where?
This is my accent.
You're from where?
Quito, Ecuador, South America.
I thought you was from Iron Duff.
When I live here all my life, I just didn't lose my accent.
El número de mi teléfono es en tarjeta. Gracias, mucho gusto.
So you from Crusoe, I hear it now.
I suspected Ecuador. I had a friend from Ecuador, very similar accent.
Anybody else? Oh, back here in the back.
Also speak hillbilly.
I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I could survive in your survival camp, you know. But I guess the question I had, you spoke a lot about, and I think we all agree, wellness is a key to surviving. You can have all the technology and all the kind of knowledge on the planet, but if you can't take care of yourself physically, you're not going to survive. So at a minimum, what would you say the minimum level of physical wellness? I'm not going to carry 70 pounds across 2 miles, 2 hours from running. I've done a lot of hiking and backpacking and all. But what would you say the minimum amount of physical wellness one needs? How far would one have to walk to be able to sustain oneself in a minimal situation, not a catastrophe? But what is your advice on physical wellness that we need to be at any given age?
There's going to be so many variables to that question based on your condition, your situation, time of year, ambient temperature, distance that needs to be traveled. So the best way I can answer that question is do the best you can as an individual. My best friend is 80 years old. He obviously has some limitations. He's also got some medical issues with his foot. And so there's things that he just can't do. He has limiting factors. But I'll tell you what this guy does. He'll get behind his rocking chair. He's got a recliner that also rocks, and he'll hold the back of it like this, and he'll be in the living room doing this. Okay? He's pushing himself. He's doing what he can do. And that's all any of us can do, is try to come out of your comfort zone a little bit and try to do a little bit more and a little bit more. Main thing you can do is stay hydrated. Keep your body hyperhydrated. Look for that clear urine we talked about. Stay flexible. I mean, we don't have to get out there and lift weights or any of that. Stay flexible. Get your heart rate up as much as you comfortably and can do safely for your medical conditions. Get out there and do a brisk walk, even with no pack. Some exercise is better than no exercise. You know, you just have to do what you can. You have to put effort into it.
For sure. Last question. Who was the last question? All right. Mike's not on. It's on now.
What was your loneliest time when you was on that island for 56 days?
Did you say my loneliest time?
Yeah. I mean, the hardest, I'm saying it though, it was all of the days was hard, but what was the hardest one, knowing that everything you went through, like you said, from the neck up, the mentality of being in a survival situation, even when you're mentally and physically, and you've been trained to do that.
Right. This question is going to shock you, but the absolute worst part of it and the hardest part of it was coming home. That was, I'm serious. That was the hardest part. You know, for me, it was one day I'm out there living basically as we were designed to. You know, we talked about we were hunter-gatherers, and we have this small speck of time on the timeline of history where we live the way we do now. Physiologically, we have not adapted. Our bodies are still in hunter-gatherer mode. Our minds are still in hunter-gatherer mode, and the way that we live is wholly disconnected from that. You know, if you look at what it ultimately takes for a human being to be happy, we have to have connection to ourselves. We have to have connection to the people around us. We have to have connection to our land base. and we have to feel like our life has a sense of purpose, that we matter, to have meaning. And how much of that I just described is really present in our daily life now. So when I went out there and lived on my base level, just me, the earth, and my Creator, nothing ever can compare to that again. And one day I'm out there and I'll find a bottle that washes up and I make a fish trap out of it, and it's sustaining my life. I'm living from that. And I come home and we're throwing away 1 bag of trash in my household per day. And that's just at my place. That's that downward spiral I'm talking about. I'm really concerned for us, and that's why I do what I do. I want to try to reconnect people with what it is to be a human on the earth and give them a real chance at surviving whatever it is that we might face, be it an individual emergency or some wider disaster. But yeah, coming home was the hardest part. Sure was. Thanks. So I'll